Editing probably is the best way to do the storytelling. You have a whole new through way to tell a different story in some ways. Well, I do something that I learned from editors that worked around Oliver Stone was I'll watch the very last master first, and I'll watch that straight through. So I literally find blocks of lines, like 3 to 4 lines. I find a place to cut where I would never cut in a sequence ever, and I string those together from the masters to the mediums to the tights, and then I just literally sit there and watch them straight through, almost as if I was working on film still, and then drop them into my cut and play it through and see what I have.
Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com or, of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by editor Chris Kapp, whose work includes The Hunger Games, Bel Air, and more recently, Goosebumps, just to name a few. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
When I was going through your bio and everything, I noticed that you worked on film sets initially and then moved into post. So what was it that attracted you to post, or what was it that made you decide to move into post?
It's really hard to say. I mean, the main thing was I had gotten just out of LMU, I got a job at Hemdell Films, which is a very small independent film company, which was one of the first small independent film companies to get an Academy nomination for Best Picture. You know, my first show out of the door was Hoosiers, basically. And I went on to set for 3 years and was coming up under the AD program, thinking the AD program gets you in to be a director, which it does not. It basically primes you to become a production manager more than anything else.
Yeah.
And Hemdell was starting not to do any more production. So a good friend of mine had asked if Darren Holmes had asked if I would take his job in the post department for Hemdell. And I'm like, sure, I know nothing about post. And he literally gave me to Randy Thornton. I became Randy's assistant, second assistant, and I was cutting literally the film masters that had been mixed in London, and
Yeah.
I was recutting them here for the changes to go to the stage, and that like threw me into editing immediately.
Wow.
And from there, it was I just stayed. It was because I love storytelling, and I
Yeah.
thought directing was the way I was going to go as a storyteller. But then I realized editing probably is the best way to do the storytelling.
hmm
Have the director do it, but then you're sitting with the director and you have the whole new through way to tell a different story in some ways, which I admired and loved.
My friends and I would make little videos in our backyards, you know, imitations of Indiana Jones and Star Wars. You know, eventually that need to tell stories became more of a technical interest and an interest in the art. To me, what's exciting is using cinema in its full potential, which is rhythm and sound design and music. Our job is to set up expectations and then deliver on them. I'm Brian Cates, and this is my course in film editing.
For your projects, because I noticed your projects vary. It's not like you're like the comedy person or the drama person. So what is it that attracts you to a project?
Usually the director first off, and then usually the script. I mean, I have passed on some huge projects that I didn't even do the interviews for because I was like, I just didn't like the script. And not because the script wasn't good. I mean, there's a very famous film that I won't say what it is, but I read the script and was like, this is so horrible and evil to women. There's no way I can do this movie. I just could in my gut, there's just no way.
So when you first get into the cutting room and you first start to get your material, how do you like to approach your first cut?
Well, I do something that I learned from editors that worked around Oliver Stone was I literally I'll watch the very last master first, and I'll watch that straight through. And then what I do is I literally find blocks of lines, like 3 to 4 lines, but I find a place to cut where I would never cut in a sequence ever. And I string those together from the masters to the mediums to the tights. And then I just literally sit there and watch them straight through continually. And then I just pull my sections almost as if I was working on film still. And I just put them, and I literally then drop them into my cut and then play it through and see what I have.
So sorry, you say you normally like you cut where you normally wouldn't cut. So like, are you taking all the takes, or you?
Every take, literally, there's say there's 7 masters. I literally have 7 masters for the first 3 lines cut together, then the next 4 to 3 lines cut
Okay.
together. But then I do the masters, then I do the mediums, and they just progressively go in tighter.
Yeah.
And then I jump to the next section or the next 4 lines. But I literally try to find a beat that I honestly would never cut to another image in my timeline.
Yeah.
And it literally stays as my master to go back for dailies. And I can like a direct, basically a lot of people do this with what is it called?
Selects.
No, it is my selects, but it's basically when you search for the dialogue in a sequence, which I never use that.
Yeah. Oh, phrase find or whatever it is.
I sadly forget what it's called now because I don't use it. And every system, when they find out I don't do that, they're like, "Thank you. We hate doing it," because literally they have to sit there and type in each line, and even like if the line isn't in the script, they add it in so that the editors can find out where it is.
What does that do though for you? Like the cutting on something that you normally wouldn't cut? Is it like
it helps me with rhythm. It
interesting?
literally helps me with rhythm to not do it that way.
So I guess it sort of jars up the editing. I guess
It-
like
For selects, it jars my brain a little bit.
yeah,
I
interesting.
don't think in a rhythmic. I don't want my dailies to be in a rhythmic thing. I want my edit to become the rhythmic.
So then how, as the cut progresses, then, like changes are going to be needed on, the characters and what have you. So how do you like to mold the characters and work that sort of angle of the story?
Basically, you have to get the whole episode together in some ways before you can start molding the. I mean,
Yeah.
I will look at what the script says and what the director. I always, every day at the end of the day, I talk to the director and get the download on what they did and what they feel and what they're thinking about what they shot.
Mhm.
So I get an understanding of where they're coming from and what they're hoping to see when they finally see my editor's cut. But a lot of times the first cut doesn't really completely shape the character. You have to watch it, I think, a couple times through.
I do have because I do have a character question for Goosebumps, but I want to know
Yeah.
how you got involved with Goosebumps first.
I had been up for quite a few projects and kept being the second to last choice for about 5 projects. And then Goosebumps came along and I met with Rob Letterman and Kevin Murphy and literally was hired on the spot. They were a week out from shooting the pilot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they didn't have an editor.
So then my character question for you is because when I was watching the series, like I look at Justin Long and when the ghost sort of absorbs into his body, he's constantly tone shifting his character.
Yes.
And so what were some of the struggles with cutting that? Like how did you how much, flexibility did you have? Did you have different takes? What was that like?
We had Justin literally, I mean, I can honestly say probably for every performance, for every scene, we just let the camera run and he would just ad lib, just sit there and spew out different versions, different ways of saying things, writing new lines, everything. So we would literally, so for once, the scene at the party where he comes and interrupts the party and he flips the light. I think there was 7 takes and close to an hour and 30 minutes of dailies.
Whoa.
Just for those like 6 lines.
So did his character how did his character then change from when you initially from the script to the final?
It was pretty close. I mean, we basically just let Justin Long do Justin Long, what he thinks is best in some ways.
Oh,
And then once we sort of found what we wanted in that character, he sort of he knew what he wanted in the character. And it was like we just all sort of melded it to get like all the editors would like look at each other's cuts constantly to see where we were going with Justin, because he was the one linchpin that we just didn't know where he was going to go.
Yeah. Well, and that was like as I was watching it, I found it so fascinating because he would do these quick turns or these little moments. And so I was wondering in terms of like maintaining that trajectory over multiple episodes would be you'd have to work together as a team.
Yeah, we did. We definitely did. And we're doing that as well in the new season with another actor that's doing a lot of the same sort of just pivotal changes that you just don't expect. Because they're not normal shifts that an actor would actually do. You're just like, wait, where did that come from?
Yeah, that's what was so weird about it because it's like I feel that for maybe it's because like I know Goosebumps in the sense of like growing up with it and what have you. So it's like, oh, I can sort of see these characters now in real
Right.
person. But I feel like if you took that and put it in another movie or show, I'd be like, this is weird. Like, this doesn't fit, but there's something about like that whole universe that you guys are building that really
Yeah.
works.
Yeah,
Were you a fan of the books at all? Or
the books were way after my time,
yeah,
sadly. I'm
no,
I
so you didn't.
I didn't get to read any of those. I read a lot of the Stephen King stuff, but not the R.L. Stein, sadly.
Yeah. Is so just for fun, what's your Stephen King book that you really like?
Well, definitely The Shining. I mean, I
Yeah.
read The Shining in one night, and I'm not a fast reader. Let's just say I literally started like midday one day and just read straight through till the next day.
Wow. No, apparently doesn't like the movie The
No,
Shining.
does not like.
Do you see that as justified when reading it, or do you?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I went opening night to The Shining here at the Grauman's Chinese and came out pissed because it wasn't the book.
Yeah.
And then I didn't see it for many, many years. And then when I sat down and watched it, I was like, this is a masterpiece. This is
Yeah.
really brilliant. But
I find
brilliant
that
not
a lot
because
with.
of not because of the script, brilliant because of
Yeah.
the direction, the cast, everything.
In Goosebumps, one of the things that's interesting to me is that they sort of merge all the books and sort of build that timeline through,
Right.
which I think is really smart and makes it more engaging. And so I'm wondering though, each episode or every couple of episodes, you get these big changes in terms of like the bad guy. So like like we have the vampires, we have Justin Long, we have the multiple kids exploding.
Right.
So um, but each of them sort of have a different, I don't want to say style of horror, but like I think
They
about
do.
yeah, and so I'm wondering like how you guys shifted that, like how did working with the post super um
Showrunner.
yeah, the showrunner go to get sort of the tones right, but also the changes right.
Definitely for my episodes, I could, as I was reading the scripts before we shot them, I would say, oh, okay, this is clearly Rob and Nick and Hillary have designed this after Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
Okay, they have designed this after Children of the Corn. Each one had sort of like a highlighted film,
Mhm.
either from the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s, that they literally were taking the design from. And then that's what we would then launch in and go from there and study that project to help us with each episode.
Now, how do you, because you don't want to just recreate that, you want to build something new. So how did you guys sort of take that as inspiration rather than just copying it?
Basically, the dailies would do that for you
Okay.
because the dailies are not going to let neither Rob or any of the David Grossman, none of the directors would literally like shot for shot
Yeah.
reshoot the show. It's more just a theme and a design in a sense.
I didn't even think about those references, and then as you said it, I was like, oh yeah, okay, invasion. I can see the invasion of body snatchers. I can see but it didn't pop off screen, right? It
Right.
felt natural.
It's funny you bring up how do you cut that without mimicking the original. I did the pilot for Limitless for TV, and literally after me and the other editor had finished the first pass for the editor's cut, the showrunner goes, did you watch the movie? I'm like, no, why would I watch the movie? He's like, well, so you know how to do this. I'm like, I'm not going to literally watch that film and mimic
Yeah.
any editing style that's in that film to this. I mean, there may be something you want to reference, but this has to stand out on its own. I don't want to just recreate something.
We've also done some VFX editing in the past.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, because we a lot of people who watch our show are young people getting into the film industry. So I'm wondering, like, how, what is the role of the VFX editor? Like, how do you work with the editor and and the director or showrunner in that
Really
position? Like,
closely.
what's
It's
the kind
funny. You asked how I got Goosebumps, and basically the reason I got Goosebumps was because of my visual effects background.
Oh,
Rob
interesting.
Littman had been looking for somebody that understood visual effects on a feature level. And because I was pretty much, there was a period of time after doing Pirates 1, 2, and 3, I wasn't credited on Pirates 1 as a visual effects editor. I literally helped and took over the visual effects with Wes, just because our schedule was insane. We did not have
Yeah.
the time. On films like Pirates, I would, Craig Wood and Steve Rifkin would literally sit and cut the sequences. I'd get them. I would break them down and start figuring out what the shots are. Then if I saw that a plate was not going to work, I would suggest to them, have you thought about this plate, or do we take the performance from this and then just use this other plate for this? So I would work really closely with the editors and the directors.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. He gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now.
Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
What would you say in Goosebumps? Like, was there a particular scene or moment that you had a lot of fun cutting that you were really proud of?
Definitely, the two biggest would definitely be the football game.
Oh, that's
Really
great.
in the pilot, I love the football game, and I love the whole moment of and I can't think of her name, going out into the forest after the party
Yeah,
in the pilot.
those are both really good scenes.
And then episode 4, I mean, Will in the whole worm chase all the way through through the plant and chopping up all the worms just was so much fun.
Well, and what I loved about, like, specifically the girl in the forest when she leaves into the forest is it was creepy. It was very like uncomfortable when you just see him standing there and
Yeah, and originally it was designed differently.
oh, really? What?
It was designed that she would see him, and then as she turned and walked away, we watched him dissolve and turn back into ash.
Oh, interesting.
We did that twice, and it was like, how about we don't do that and we just leave him where he is, and then all of a sudden he appears somewhere else, and you leave that moment of him turning to ash, Biddle turning into ash, for the moment she runs into him face to face, and it actually strengthened the sequence. It made it much scarier.
Well, and it also, what's nice is it then sets up the football game really nicely.
Yeah, it sets up the football game really well.
Right, because it like that whole thing of like seeing the camera, then seeing things on the field, and then it slowly builds up to the ash and stuff. What can you tell us about season 2 that you're allowed to? I understand there's not, like, from an editing perspective, like, what were some of the new challenges you got to take on?
We started shooting April 1st, and we are done.
Oh, wow.
We see final visual effects this next week. We are mixed up through 1 through 3, and I mean, by November 6th, we will be done with all mix and everything.
Wow.
So whereas last year we had almost a full year, this year we have like basically 7 months.
Now, is that because of the popularity of it, and they're like, we need to get the next season out, or? Yeah, well, that's interesting, 'cause I actually appreciate that because it drives me nuts when it's like you'll see the next season in 2 or 3 years, and you're like, I don't remember the first one now.
No, season 2 is massive. It's so much fun.
All right.
Well, I love season 1, but season 2 it goes to a new level.
Yeah. Now, I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
I will always go back to Jean Cocteau's La Belle et la Bête, The Beauty and the Beast, which is just, I think, one of the most stunning pieces of cinematography ever. It's just gorgeous to watch.
Yeah.
And it's like Coppola used it so much in Dracula, because there's just so many stunning, iconic moments throughout that whole film.
Wow.
And then if I'm just home doing nothing, I'll throw the X-Files on, I have to say.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great series.
Yeah. And it runs the gamut on just great horror, great comedy, great everything.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you this week.
No, thank you. It's really a pleasure.
And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out on filmmakeru.com and, of course, on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.